Well, as promised, the GOP has now unleashed its final and brand new stimulus package proposal, and as promised, I'm going to be covering every single detail in this video. We're going to be looking at all of the brand new features in this new proposal. This will be also one of the final videos that you see with my classic and long time white background, because in the next couple videos, you're actually going to be seeing me in my brand new studio. It's worth over $2,000. I'm going to be doing a video just covering the studio itself and talking about how I got monetized, all of that good stuff. So you're going to want to be subscribed to my channel if you haven't already to see the new updates, which are coming very soon. I'll preface by saying that not everyone is 100% satisfied with this proposal. There'll probably be a lot of revisions in it, as Democrats are already saying that they won't vote for this proposal as it is right now. Personally, I am quite satisfied with this, as the unemployment benefits are in there. So I am satisfied with this, and I do think that it is a rather decent proposal. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an entire separate video just on the $1,200 stimulus check alone, regarding who will actually qualify. But I will skim through that in this update. I will talk about all the features in this bill, everything that it entails, but I'll go more in depth, and so that way you'll know exactly if you will qualify for that stimulus check in a separate video. And if you're watching this in the near future, I'll link that down below in the description, so that way you will have it. But we finally do have the Republican proposal. This was released on Monday, and it's called the HEALS Act, HEALS. They dubbed it the HEALS Act. It stands for Health, Economic Assistance, Liability Protection, and Schools Act. This is essentially the Republican answer to the Democrat proposal, the HEROES Act, that was passed back in May. This one, though, is much less of a price tag. This one is only $1 trillion. The HEROES Act came with a $3 trillion price tag. Discussions have already begun to compromise between the two bills. There's a huge difference in spending, though, and this could make for some long, testy negotiations between the two parties. When Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell spoke about the new act in a press conference, he said, quote, "The American people need more help. They need it to be comprehensive and carefully tailored, and that is what the Senate majority has assembled." Now, McConnell didn't exactly sound optimistic that the differences between the House and Senate Act will be resolved quickly. However, this will jumpstart the much-needed negotiation for the next stimulus package. McConnell said every bill has to start somewhere, and this is the starting place. We can't pass a bill in the Senate without Democrats, nor obviously can we pass it in the House. You'll have plenty of stories to cover along the way as we have these discussions back and forth across party lines and with the Trump administration. Now, the former Republican candidate and current Republican Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, he was even less enthusiastic about a quick resolution. He said, quote, "The answer to these challenges will not be simply shoveling cash out of Washington. I think it's likely you'll see a number of Republicans in opposition to this bill and expressing serious concerns." So what is inside the Republican HEALS Act? Well, here we go. We're going to look at all of the details. So first on deck, and like I mentioned, I will go a lot more in depth on the stimulus check. I'll do an entire video just covering who will qualify for this second stimulus check of $1,200, but it is in there. And the amount of the economic impact payment, or the EIP, stipulated in the HEALS Act does match that $1,200 number that was in the CARES Act that was passed back in March, which seems like an eternity ago. It was agreed upon back in March, and a question on many citizens' lips is how much of that will they get, and who is included in those related payments. So this will be nailed down over the coming days as these discussions do continue. But one thing we do know right now is that the increased inclusion around dependents will be a welcome part of the new bill. Only those under 17 were included as part of the dependents group in the CARES Act, completely missing out students and college-age people. Now age will not be considered for the group, where $500 can be claimed per person, up to a maximum of 3. This is believed to add as many as 26 million further payments. The details aren't 100% refined just yet. They will still be negotiated. However, they are very similar to the CARES Act, so you will see $1,200 for individuals who make up to $75,000 per year, and then also $500 for each dependent. But under the CARES Act, there was an age limit. This time, college kids, and myself included, I will get that $500 as I am a dependent. Another thing you can expect in the HEALS Act, this is tentative, we don't know for sure, is you smashing that like button. Be sure you give the video a big thumbs up, just smash that like button. It'll just help with that YouTube algorithm so that more people could see videos just like this and be privy of what's in the HEALS Act. It'll just help me out and support me. I do greatly appreciate it. Now, in addition to the $1,200 stimulus check, another focal point is definitely going to be those unemployment benefits, as the $600 federal payments do cut off July 31st. So this is another main key factor of the HEALS Act. So in it, you're going to see a reduction of unemployment benefits to $200 a week. Again, this is all just a proposal, so it might end up perhaps being higher than that, but it does seem like it would be at least $200 a week. Now, if Democrats want higher than that number, but Republicans don't want to bend, there could be a stalemate and you won't see any benefits for a long time. You're also going to see $100 billion set aside just for funding of education, as that is very important, as we don't know whether or not all schools will be reopened this coming fall. And you'll also see about $190 billion in renewed funding for the PPP, or Paycheck Protection Program, and tax incentives to help small businesses. You're also going to be seeing 5 years of liability protection for COVID-related lawsuits against businesses, schools, and healthcare companies. That's something the Republicans strongly pushed for and did want in the bill no matter what happens. You're also going to see an extension of forbearance payments for federally backed mortgages. You're also going to see additional funding for testing and tax deduction for meals for businesses. They'll be able to write off 100% of meals as an expense. Again, separate video just for that $1,200 stimulus check. That'll be down below if you're watching in the future. But let's look at now what the HEALS Act calls for in regards to unemployment benefits. Now, you still have tens of millions of people unemployed, and both sides are miles apart when it comes to this issue. So this will probably be the central point of the negotiation on this bill. So what the Senate's HEALS Act will fundamentally do is aim to reduce the amount of federal unemployment benefits from $600 a week to $200 a week. Now, this is a very stark cut, going from $600 to $200, but you do have to remember that it was just weeks ago, it seems like days ago, that Republicans were saying absolutely not, we will not extend $600 benefits by any means. Everyone will be getting zero after July 31st. So the fact that they were able to bend and they are now saying that you will get something on top of the state benefits does bode well. So this would last until September 30th and be replaced by a formula that would cap unemployment benefits at 70% of the worker's regular pay. So under the Republican framework, if this were to be implemented, you would not be able to earn more than 70% of what you were making prior to the pandemic after September 30th. Republicans stood their ground for a very long time. They said that these $600 payments were a disincentive to return back to work, and many people were making more with this federal payment than they were prior. Mnuchin said, I think workers and Americans understand the concept that you shouldn't be paid more to stay at home than to work. It's definitely an interesting idea. However, this will be utter chaos and it will be extremely difficult to be implemented. This is because, especially for hourly workers, it will be very hard to determine how much an employee was making before the pandemic hit. And another substantial problem is that even highly populated states still work on old computer systems. Like the New York unemployment system does work more specifically for Internet Explorer because that's what the old system was based on. So updating these systems could be costly, time-consuming, and could very well take months. Mnuchin did concede. He said, we're dealing with the mechanical issues associated with that. Some states can implement this quickly, some states will take time. And what else has been put into the HEALS Act? Well, there'll be a cap on student loan payments. The HEALS Act tells student loan borrowers that if they didn't have an income, they won't have to make a student loan payment. And when they do get an income, their student loan payment can't rise above 10% of income after deductions are made for food, housing, clothing, transportation, and other necessities of life. Mortgage assistance was also thrown in there. People who lost their jobs because of the virus and thus their ability to make mortgage payments were given a reprieve in the CARES Act passed last March. So the HEALS Act will extend that provision that allows homeowners to pause payments or lower their monthly payment without penalty. And when it comes to the PPP, or Paycheck Protection Program, this program was enormously popular in the CARES Act and will become even more popular this time around because it focuses even tighter on small businesses. It also separates first-time borrowers from those businesses that already received PPP loans back in March but need it again. For example, businesses that received a PPP loan in the first round can apply again, but only if they have less than 300 employees. Second-time borrowers must show that they experienced a 50% reduction in gross revenues, and second-timers can only borrow up to $2 million this time. The original parameters are still there for first-time borrowers, meaning that if your business has less than 500 employees, you can borrow up to $10 million, or 2.5 times average total monthly costs, and you must attest your business was affected by the virus. Now, either borrower can use the money for renovations needed to comply with CDC safety guidelines and personal protective equipment, or PPE. And a mainstay of the Republican side, liability protection. This is another of the lesser discussed issues, but one that is ultra important to McConnell. He wants a 5-year moratorium on coronavirus-related lawsuits against businesses, healthcare centers, and schools. McConnell has made this a must part of any compromise bill. He said, quote, "Let me make it clear, there won't be a bill that passes the Senate that doesn't have this in it. Funding for schools is in there. The HEALS Act sets aside $105 billion for schools, with added money going to schools that reopen as scheduled this fall. The first $70 billion of money would go for schools K through 12. Schools that open on time would get extra money, so that way they can prepare to open safely. Colleges and universities would get the next $30 billion, and then $5 billion would be set aside for flexible funding used by governors for any level of education. There's a couple small provisions in the HEALS Act that really don't affect Americans too much, but they are in there, so let's cover it. For example, the HEALS Act does include provisions for $1.75 billion to rebuild FBI headquarters, which may seem odd in a relief package. However, the headquarters is located directly across the street from Trump's luxury hotel in downtown Washington, D.C. So this was a late addition to the bill at the urging of the White House. Now, the HEALS Act and the HEROES Act do sound quite familiar, so the main difference here is just going to be the price tag and the fact that the HEALS Act came from the Senate, Republicans, and that the HEROES Act came from the House, or Democrats. But a lot of features were left out of this bill that were in the HEROES Act. For example, details in the House-passed bill are now not going to be in the HEALS Act. Like, you won't see hazard pay. Democrats had originally put $200 billion into their HEROES Act to help companies offer hazard pay. This would have went to doctors, nurses, police officers, social workers, grocery clerks, and many other occupations. They would qualify for bonus pay that could reach up to $10,000. And the HEALS Act has absolutely no mention of hazard pay. There's also a great difference in funding for cities and states. The HEROES Act would have provided $1 trillion just for funding to cities and states to help them make up for tax revenue loss because of the pandemic. This money would have been used to shore up gaping holes in city and state budgets and would have impacted everything from paying the local police to keeping state parks open. The HEALS Act doesn't have a dollar budgeted for cities and states. Instead, it offers more flexibility for spending of the $150 billion still there from the first relief bill back in March. And the HEROES Act also asked for $100 billion just for rental assistance for the estimated 44 million renters in the U.S. This money would have been used to reimburse landlords, some of whom have been waiting 4 months for tenants to pay their rent. Republicans aren't as keen on continuing to provide protection for renters in danger of eviction. Now, after saying Sunday that the HEALS Act would extend eviction protection for renters, the White House suddenly withdrew its support Monday, and so did Senate Republicans. And the HEROES Act would have been a dream come true for student loan borrowers. When it comes to student loan forgiveness, they would have not only gotten a 12-month suspension on payments and interest, but also would have received $10,000 of loan forgiveness if they were expecting economic distress because of the virus. The HEALS Act offers students the option of repaying student loans on the 10-year plan or signing up for income-based repayment that could mean $0 in monthly payments if you're not working. But is this going to pass? Well, it varies in a lot of key ways from the Democrat proposal, the HEROES Act, which we've covered before. Links will be down below in the description. So it's very unlikely in the current format. Frankly, it's a starting point for negotiations. This will create a framework that will eventually lead to a bill that will be passed. Whether it's the Republican HEALS Act or a variation of it that's ultimately negotiated, you will definitely see direct payments to Americans, as this is something that both party lines do agree on. But when on earth will this be voted on, as we are aware that the Senate will be taking a perhaps not so much earned recess starting August 7th all the way to Labor Day. So Labor Day 2020 is September 7th. The recess starts August 7th. So whether it's before the 7th or after the 7th, that 1 month difference could mean a lot, especially for this upcoming election. This is coupled with the fact that unemployment benefits are set to expire July 31st, which is very soon. You might even be watching this and they might have already expired. And so they're going to have to act hastily and quickly to get this voted on and passed. The clock is ticking loudly for economic relief, but it's hard to tell if anyone in Congress is truly listening. Congressional leaders would basically have to bridge a $2 trillion chasm between the HEROES Act and the HEALS Act, and that's a very tall order for Congress, especially in such a short amount of time. The vote will hopefully happen by August 7th. Pelosi even said that she would keep members of Congress an extra week if there's no vote by then. But even if it is discussed and negotiated, it may not even be passed until after September 8th. And even if both parties do come up with a revised version, remember, it still has to be brought to the president's desk and ultimately signed by him to be effectively put into law. It's truly hard to predict which side will cave in first, make that first move to bend. Democrats came out swinging first with a bunch of proposals. They seem to have the upper hand. Republicans will probably play the fiscal responsibility card here, and they'll talk about how this would just balloon the deficit and increased debt. There's no doubt that this will be cutting it very close to that August 7th deadline. A scenario that could perhaps play out is Democrats come off their dream of $1 trillion just for funding in cities and states, and Republicans might bend and say, okay, we'll do $400 a week as opposed to $200 a week for the unemployment benefits. Ultimately, voters will definitely keep this in mind when it comes to voting, whether it be at the ballot box or sending their vote in by mail. A lot of people are dissatisfied, they're disillusioned, and are even feeling disenfranchised. This bill provides some progress, but there's a hell of a lot of work to be done right now. If I was in Congress and I knew that my re-election was on the line, I would be losing sleep over this. What are your thoughts on the HEALS Act? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below in the comments. Let's keep the conversation going. But I hope you enjoyed this update. More videos are coming on the way. If you did, do give this video a big thumbs up. Smash that like button. I greatly appreciate it. And if you'd like to see more videos from my channel, I post videos every single week covering business, finance, investing, entrepreneurship, mindset, strategy, and tips and tricks from my own experience. If you do subscribe, I greatly appreciate that as well. And if you'd like to be notified every single time I make a new video, so that you're first line to see it before anyone else, click that little notification bell as well, so you're notified every single time I make a new video. See you in the next one.